Good afternoon. I'm Amy Jeffries. I'm the news director at WRKF, which is 89.3 FM here in Baton Rouge, but we are on 97.7 Downtown Radio live at Blues Fest. I happen to be from Connecticut, but to make a long story short, I got blown in here to Louisiana by a hurricane known as Katrina. But in 1992, when I was still in Connecticut, I knew all of the words to Mr. Wendell.
Come on.
To Everyday People. And to
great.
Tennessee.
Wow.
And I am very lucky to have the man who wrote those lyrics speech with me today.
Well, thank you. That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's awesome that you memorize them. I'm going to put you on the spot. Let's go.
Go ahead, Mr. Wendell.
That's great.
Yeah. So you are, of course, the front man of Arrested Development.
Yeah.
Around here, people will probably ask you, so where'd you go to school? Who are your parents? But this is your chance. How do you like to be introduced?
Well, my parents are a great place to start. My mom and dad are both activists, and my mom owns a black newspaper out of Milwaukee called the Milwaukee Community Journal. So she's run that for about 35 years or so, maybe a little longer. And so since I was a little kid, you know, I was always around that atmosphere of issues and stuff like that. So I think that's a good place to introduce sort of who I am, the foundations of who I am.
Right,
Yeah.
An activist who was around words growing up.
Yeah, around words and around, you know, conversations.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So literally last night I was in New Orleans, and I was in a cab, and the driver had on the radio, and it was tuned to Q93, and the DJ was mixing with Everyday People.
Nice.
Literally.
It's a good DJ.
You know, and I'm listening. I'm like, oh man, I know that track. You
Right.
know. So
I saw your tweet about that, actually. Yeah.
Yeah, I was like, no kidding.
Yeah.
And,
That's how I knew I had an interview today, by the way. I forgot. We talked about it when I talked to you earlier on, and I forgot all about it. And I said, I think I'm supposed to be somewhere at 2:45 today. So
yeah. Well, I'm glad that I could provide that reminder.
Thank you. I'm really appreciative to Twitter and to your reminder. Yeah.
Yeah, right on. So, so is that a compliment? You know, being sampled?
Definitely. You know, sampling. It's funny. I did a lecture at South by Southwest this year called "How Sampling Saved the Music Industry." I love it. I think sampling is incredible, and I think it's a great art form. So I love it when people, you know, sample my stuff or play my stuff. Anyone, you know, it's a pleasure. It's an honor.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, you of course do a lot of sampling yourself.
I do. It's from, my dad used to own a nightclub. So my mom was in the newspaper business. My dad was a nightclub owner, and I used to spin at his nightclub, you know, since 13 on up. And yeah, I just see the power of music and the power of, you know, of appreciating good music, playing it, how it makes people feel. And it's just an amazing conduit to get people to feel different ways and to help change the mood or attitude or stuff like that. So
Yeah.
sampling is just a relative of all of that.
Right. Well, so what makes for a good sample? Is it about just kind of the music and its rhythm and its sound, or is it about the reference that you're making when you're picking out a piece of music?
All of those things. You know, literally it's the sound. You know, like some people will argue, you know, well, why don't you just recreate? And it's fine. You can recreate, and a lot of things we've done in Arrested Development's career and in my own career, we've done that. But
We covered a few Beatles tunes.
We did. We recreated a Beatles tune. But you know, there's also something special about the particular way that the original artist recorded, and maybe that equipment's not available today, or maybe the team of people that sort of created that sound. It's hard to recreate some of those things, and so there's an art to how they did it, and there's an art to picking those things and wanting to bring that into today's culture. Like, okay, well, the way they did it back then, I want to bring that to right now and add my own twist to it or whatever.
Do you think it makes a difference whether you're recreating or whether you're playing that sample in terms of kind of what it does to the audience? You know, you're kind of pointing to something, and maybe it brings up certain emotions or memories for the listener.
I'm a big believer that all samples, like, it's almost like bringing up ancestry, because it is all music, all art, all of these things that we look at, feel, touch, and all of that, it has a spirit to it. And whether you think about it in that way or not, I still believe it's happening. And so when you hear a certain song, it's bringing a certain spirit to you. It's bringing a certain energy to you. And when you sample, you're bringing that back up. Whatever that person was, wherever that space that they were at back in those days, you're bringing it back up to now.
There was a fight at some point where the music industry was kind of pushing back against sampling as sort of...
Still are.
Right.
Yeah, it's very much a big deal.
Yeah. Are you mixed up in that?
I have been. I've been sued a good number of times and been in a lot of court cases. And I'm still a big believer in the art of it. I think that it broadens the landscape of what music is, you know, and it makes the charts more interesting when people are sampling and when people aren't, but having that mixture. And it also, I think, helps the population's mindset, with, you know, indirectly, but it helps the mindset of the culture. When your music is diverse, then the culture has different things that they're sort of pulling off of as inspiration. So the dress style changes, the feelings of what you can accomplish as a culture and as a society changes. All of these things change depending on how broad and how wide the music scape is. When the music scape is, in art in general, is very, very narrow, then the mindset is narrow as well. I think all of that stuff correlates.
Yeah, and part of the question was, you know, who gets to monetize that art? You know,
Yeah.
who gets the financial benefit from putting art out there, and then how can other people use it or utilize it?
Totally.
And those are some things too that you're involved with now. We're dealing with new technologies, with
Yeah.
streaming music and you know, downloads. Who gets the monopoly? Is it iTunes? Is it Amazon?
Yeah,
Is
exactly.
it Spotify?
Yeah.
And how do musicians kind of get paid? You know, and we need that so that musicians can be sustained.
Sure,
And you're involved in that too right now, aren't you?
I am, yeah. I've always been interested in it. You know, being a professional musician and being in this industry, I've always been interested in how to make it more fair to the musicians and to the artists. And so far, a lot of the battle has been waged by lawyers and publishing companies, and unfortunately, a lot of them own the content, and the artists themselves don't even own the content. And so a lot of times artists will get behind a lot of those movements thinking that it will benefit them, and in essence it really only benefits, or primarily benefits, you know, publishing companies and lawyers and stuff like that. And so right now I'm part of a company called U42, and it's this company I just got involved with about 1.5 years ago. I'm president of the music division, and our whole hustle has been trying to find a way for artists to actually monetize off the material as much as, or even more so than, all the other people that's needed and involved in the creative process, but the creators actually monetizing the most.
Yeah. So back in 1992, as far as your music was concerned, just specifically without the business around it necessarily, I mean, it really felt like you were on to something. Arrested Development was Best New Artist. You won Best Rap Performance for your debut album, which was an album that was full of Afrocentric, socially conscious songs. I mean, this was revolutionary at the time, for sure.
Thank you.
But it wasn't sustained. You know, you guys put a second album out, and then a couple of years after that, you kind of went on hiatus for a good long time.
It's true.
So, and then you came back and got back together, and in 2010, it seems like you maybe were still thinking about what happened in 1992. You had this track, Trends. Maybe you know the lyric
Trends, yeah,
that I'm speaking of, you know, that I'm going to quote it, but you could probably say it better than I can.
I probably can't.
You know, in 93, the music industry promoted anything that would be contradictory to our victory.
Yeah. And not talking about our victory as Arrested Development, but as a people. Yeah, definitely. I think that there was a cultural change that happened around that time in 93 where, you know, from the really mid-'80s to early 90s, in hip-hop we call it the golden era of hip-hop, where there was a lot of diversity in thought and even progressive thinking going on and being portrayed in the music. And then in like 94, 95, it shifted from being about materialism and about, you know, sort of it was about this whole thing about like private jets and bling and that type of thing being the primary topic of the music. And the song Trends is addressing the fact that, you know, everybody can follow whatever they want to follow, but it should be based upon their own interests. And so every group of people, not just race of people, but every group of people should have their own interests. And so whether it's the, a Christian movement, or whether it's a racial movement, or whether it's a sexual orientation movement, that each one of them have their own particular interest that they're trying to accomplish. And based on that interest, you should follow the things that better your interests and that help you. And I think for us as a people, we've followed trends sometimes even against our own interests. Mm-hmm. And that was what I was talking about in that song.
So tell me a little bit about what you were thinking when you wrote that. I mean, what sparked that? What brought up some of that history for you as you were putting that song together?
Really, I mean, the main thing that brought that up for me was the fact that, we come from such a long legacy of people who have been in this struggle of trying to redeem black life to where it should rightfully be, which is just like every other life. And unfortunately, even to this day, with the shooting in Charleston and so on and so forth, we're still struggling with that concept of the rest of the world and even ourselves understanding our value as just like anyone else, just to be fully human, fully respected, and so on and so forth. And so there's been a long legacy of people fighting for that. And I feel like when we get detoured on various trends and whatever, we lose track of the fact that we're actually striving to accomplish a goal here. And there's been many people that have fought and died for that specific goal. And if we don't keep that in our foresight, then we lose track of this long continuous struggle, this baton that's been passed to us as a generation. You know?
Yeah, I thought it was just interesting that you brought up 93 and the shift that was happening then, and was wondering about what might have made you think about that specifically quite a while later in 2009 or 10 when you were writing that song.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I think for a while, I think that I was hoping that the trend of like this materialism, this whole sort of degrading of our women, that whole trend would end, and it didn't end. It's been still here since 94 or so, and it's been continuing on. And I think that's what gave me the motivation to write that song, these trends.
Yeah. Well, you, of course, with Arrested Development, have been continuing to put out tracks that talk about, things like inequities in the American health system, things like genocide that's happening still in the African continent. Heck, you've got songs about recycling.
Yeah, that's true.
So who are you thinking of when you're putting these songs together, when you're writing your lyrics?
I'm from Milwaukee, and I'm from my mom owns this business right on MLK, which is 3rd Street, Milwaukee, and very much the black community. And there's this real separation of sort of class in Milwaukee. And so when I write songs, I'm really thinking about where I'm from and the people that I see on a pretty much daily basis, whether I'm in Milwaukee or not, wherever I'm at. Those are the people that I'm sort of thinking about. And really, when I travel, I see the same faces and a lot of the same conditions pretty much everywhere, So I see it a lot, and it motivates me. When I write songs, those are the people I'm sort of thinking of.
Yeah. You've been traveling a lot, mostly overseas. You've been doing a lot of touring overseas the last decade or so. So what is it like to be talking to an audience in Japan about what's going on in Milwaukee?
Well, first of all, I'm very grateful, because I'm grateful for the fact that there's other continents that are not doing the exact same thing as we're doing here in America. And that gives us, as a group, an opportunity to go different places and perform for, eager audiences, and they're not totally saturated with the same things that we're saturated with on the radio here in the States. And that's exciting for us. So I'm really grateful for that. And it's cool to do interviews and to do conversations with people across the world. You start to understand more about their culture. They're starting to understand more about yours, and there's this dialogue and interchange that's really it's inspiring. And I'm grateful too, because I get to bring my family with me. So I bring my wife with me, I bring my children with me, and since they were 2 years old, they would travel to Japan or Africa or Europe or Australia and so on and so forth. And that's great for them because it gives them a chance as well to see this worldview. And if there's something in the States that is not moving to their spirit, then they know that there's other ways people are living across the world, and it's not just one way to be,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Are you hoping to kind of rebuild the following and the audience in the United States?
Yeah, we do want to do that. I mean, I think a lot of it is so out of our control that I feel like having a major label is a machinery, and there's benefits to it. And I don't have that anymore, and we don't have that major label machinery. So I think that there's a lot that's truly just beyond my control, and I just have to surrender to the process and, hope that I could do the best that I can with the resources that I have and the group has. But other than that, you just have to, I think at the end of the day, I come from that publisher state of mind of let's just publish the story, and where it goes, how far it goes is less of a concern. It's just making sure you publish the work. And that's sort of how I think about my music.
Yeah. Another thing that Arrested Development did, and of course we're talking with Speech, who's the front man of Arrested Development, here at Backstage at the Baton Rouge Blues Festival. And one of the things that Arrested Development was a pioneer with as well was having a spiritual elder as part of your group, Baba OJ. How did you connect with him initially?
Baba, it's very ironic how Baba and I connected. He, well, first of all, I got the idea of having an elder in our group from being in Jamaica. And just their parties used to have just this mixture of older and young all in the same room, as opposed to this generation gap that I saw in the States. And so I was on the hunt for somebody that could be an elder in our group. And Baba was a guy that was at the same university as me, UWM in Milwaukee, and he would hang with the young people, and he was 57 at the time, and we were all 19, 20, and so it was just really cool. He had this young spirit about him. He was very much willing to hang with young people, and I asked him if he'd be in this hip-hop group, and he was like, no, I don't want to, no thank you. And then he found out later that I was Pat and Robert's son, and he was the best man in my mom and dad's wedding. Okay. And I had no clue about any of this history, and he didn't know that it was me coming to him. So when he found out that there was a connection there in family, he said, yeah, I'll do it. And he didn't know that it would actually do well, and neither did I, but he got in a group, and it obviously did quite well, and he's been touring the world ever since, until recently.
Yeah. Of course, we've heard his voice on tracks. But,
yeah, exactly.
But what has it meant for him to be a spiritual elder in the group?
Very important for us. I mean, Baba, first of all, obviously, as an elder, he has just a lot of wisdom. But as a elder who traveled all throughout Africa, he had a lot of wisdom that was sort of like this whole African way of looking at the world and worldview, and it was just very different, very unique from what I was used to growing up in the West, and so it was just very passionate and fresh for us, and it helped shape a lot of the views of what we talked about in the music.
Yeah, talk a little bit about how he shaped those views. I mean, was he sort of like a grounding presence? Was he the guy who offered you perspective about what you all should be messaging on?
Definitely. Well, Baba was part of a society called the Asar Set Society, and it's a society that sort of studies ancient Egyptology and African traditions and so on and so forth. So, when we would travel, a lot of people from his particular society would come through, and we would build and just talk about issues and stuff like that. So a lot of that grounding came casually in just our general, on the tour bus, backstage type of talks, you know what I mean? And we would build with people locally. So whenever we would go someplace, we would generally, our schedule would be to go to a homeless shelter, go to the projects, talk to the people at the homeless shelter, the projects. Then during sound check, we'd have people come over to our sound checks, and we'd talk with them. And it'd be people of all races, all backgrounds, religions, and just sort of building conversations and exchanging ideas and things like that. And I think the whole point of it was just to grow and to understand the world a little better, and it was just stimulating conversation.
Yeah. Have you seen other acts pick up on that and bring somebody along like you all did?
I'm sure there are some. I'm not sure of them, though. like, especially from an elder standpoint, you know, I think Baba's by far the oldest dude in hip hop, you know. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. But he's not the guy who's been in hip hop necessarily the longest.
No, not at all. Not at all. Definitely not.
And when we were talking, you and I got a chance to talk a little bit before today, which was great. And you told me that Baba OJ was one of the guys on the tour that brought blues music onto the bus.
Definitely, yeah. Definitely.
Yeah. So how does that show up in your music? We are at the Blues Fest, after all.
Right, without a doubt. Well, it showed up, you know, Mama's Always on Stage was a blues track, you know what I'm saying? And we sampled.
Yes, it was, Buddy Guy.
Exactly, Buddy Guy, Junior Wells, and we sampled that directly because of our influence with Baba. I mean, it's just having his musical taste be on the bus, and he loved, I mean, Baba's, I think he's from Mississippi. I forget exactly where he's from. I think it was Mississippi, but he loved the blues, and so he would play in it all the time. And just hearing that stuff on the bus would obviously get into our minds and like, oh, that would be great, you know, to use that or to flip that and make that into something that we would do. And Mama's on Stage, we're going to do that tonight. And that's a track that we feel like we flipped it and made it ours, but yet has blues roots, obviously.
Yeah, sure. Is blues music obviously coming into your performance tonight? That's pretty contemporary. Are there other tracks that are ending up in your mixes now?
Oh, definitely. I mean, other blues tracks or just other? Oh, yeah.
Blues.
There is actually. There's a bunch of tracks. They probably won't be done tonight, but there's some tracks on our Heroes of the Harvest record as well where it's straight up blues.
Yeah.
And on our 3 Years album, Blues Happy is another tune that, you know, we did purposely from Baba's inspiration.
Yeah. So how else do you see, you know, or do you see Arrested Development as being on the blues continuum, you know, or part of that family tree, musically speaking? Of course, your music will probably mostly get filed under hip hop or under rap. So how do you connect? What's the connective glue there for you?
Honestly, I think that hip hop really is a lover of all music. And so just by nature, hip hop sort of doesn't, it is a style in and of itself, but it is inspired by every style of music out there, period. Whether it's Middle Eastern music or blues or disco or anything else. So I think for us, what connects us to blues is sort of blues spirit. The spirit of blues to me is honest conversation. It's about the average man's struggle. This is how I look at it. And it is sort of folk music in its sense of an honest conversation through music. And that's what we're about. That's the lineage that we sort of follow. Not every hip hop group follows that. Some other hip hop artists is like as unhonest as you could be is perfect, or as braggadocious as you could be is perfect, or whatever, you know. It's just the particular lineage that we're on. That's the type of thing that we're all about.
Do you think sometimes even with those, if you will, braggadocious hip-hop tunes, that you still hear that lineage musically in terms of the samples they might be bringing into the music or the rhythms that they're using in putting together tracks?
I didn't get the question.
Well, so you know, you might have lyrics that are bragging,
right?
You know,
right.
But you might have musical elements in the track that are still bringing up some of those connections to other types of music and genres and histories.
Yeah. And I mean, bragging is a part of the hip hop culture. I mean, I understand that and love that and appreciate it. But yeah, musically, like I said, I mean, hip hop is so diverse, and so what I love about the nature of hip hop is that it is a humble music in its creativity, because we create based on what other people have done. And it's not, some people say, well, that's like a vulture or it's parasitic, and it's not to me. It's more appreciative. It's more understanding that we're all in this together. It's an accepting music where it accepts people from everywhere, and it accepts music and styles from everywhere. So I love the nature of hip hop. To me is a very amazing music form, and I know why it's gotten accepted across the planet. And I can honestly say, and I've been many places, that by far hip hop is by far the most popular music on the planet Earth. And I say that honestly. I don't think that there's another music that has captured the the imagination of youth, like, or any singular music, any singular genre that has captured the imagination of the youth across the planet, like hip hop has. I mean, hip hop is truly powerful. And I think it's because it has this humility of, you know, we want to work with somebody. We're not just trying to do it ourselves. And so the music we incorporated in our style, you know, it could come from any place. You know.
How's the hip hop in Tokyo?
It's pretty great, actually. Tokyo, and the hip hop culture there is great. I mean, people breakdancing, DJing, it's, you know, graffiti. I mean, the whole 9 yards. It's huge.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So do you just constantly have music running through your head?
Not constantly, but a lot. You know what I mean? It's definitely a part of my DNA. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely.
Do you think in rhyme, or do you have to go back and, you know?
I definitely don't think in rhyme. No, I definitely think, you know, in concepts, and then I have to go and strive to make it into a song, which is hard for me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So how do you go about that? Do you have a rhyming dictionary that?
Sometimes.
Yeah.
Sometimes I'll get a rhyming dictionary if I need some help with big words. You know what I mean? But no, in general, I you know, I don't need one. But thesaurus, definitely. You know,
Yeah.
trying to think of new ways to say the same thing is always interesting.
Online or a real, honest to goodness
Online.
paper
Nowadays,
roges?
online.
Really?
You know, of course, I've been doing this for 25 years, so earlier it might have been books and stuff like that, but
Yeah.
now it's online. Yeah.
It's abridged. You know that, right? The online one is abridged.
It's abridged?
Yeah.
Oh, is it? No, I didn't know that. No.
So, yeah, all right. Well, we'll see if we can fit you a real thesaurus.
Please give me one. I would love that. I would keep it with me everywhere. That'd be great.
Get you one on a Kindle maybe, or an iPad.
Yeah, that'd
like
be
that.
great.
All
That'd be
right,
great.
Cool. Speech, it is great to talk to you.
It's really a pleasure. I thank you for the interview. It's good stuff.
Yeah,
Good
and
question.
we're really looking forward to hearing Arrested Development
I hope
tonight.
everybody will come out tonight. I hope you guys will come see our show. Thank
Yeah.
you. Thank you. We really appreciate you guys a lot. Thank you.
Arrested Development hits the foundation stage here at the River Center at the Baton Rouge Blues Festival at 7:05 p.m. according to the schedule. I'm Amy Jeffries with WRKF, but we are live backstage on 97.7 Downtown Radio.
Thank you. Thanks, y'all, very much.